Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This time we are talking about how to lead without speaking, or how to be a supportive listener. I'm back with Tracy. Good to see you, Tracy.
Hey, Drew.
Tracy, I feel like this is one of those, subjects, topics, skills that was really fresh for me when I started becoming a small group leader. I had never really thought that much about listening, had never, given it much consideration as like something to think about on its own. And it's been really helpful for me as a human being to study listening, learn about listening, practice listening. How about for you, as somebody who's been in ministry, who's been a small group leader? What are some of your reflections about listening, or what have you learned about listening?
I absolutely agree with that. I think it is something that we need to lean into and really want to grow in and honor because it's so important. I experienced the flip side of this where, at my kids' school, I'm always interested in meeting other parents and becoming friends with other parents. But I would notice over time there would be like a certain set of fellow parents that I would see and be really excited to see them in the morning at drop off and want to connect. And there'd be other folks where I'd be a little bit less excited, or if I was having a rough day, I'd be like, maybe I'm going to avoid them. And was thinking about that. And I realized the common thread was that there was just some folks that never listened, never
Right.
asked any questions. The entire conversation was literally only them talking about themselves.
Mm.
And I realized as much as I liked them as people and, wanted to connect, that just becomes really tiring and draining. And that was sort of an interesting lesson for me. Like, okay, I really want to be someone that creates that kind of space for people, that can listen well, that knows how to do that and is intentional about wanting to be a really good listener. And I think that is super important in the small group space as well. And that I think that it would alleviate a lot of anxiety for us if we knew as small group leaders. We don't need to fix all the things that people
Mm.
are going through. We
Yeah.
don't even, sometimes even advice is not helpful, but creating
Yeah.
space to listen, to really hold that emotional, spiritual space for people, literal space for them to speak the things that they're feeling and going through, the questions that they have, and to just be there as a responsive presence is such a gift. People are hungry for that. They
Mm.
need that. And that's a huge way that you can serve the people in your small group.
Tracy, I so relate with what you're saying, and I find that's true for me, and I'm sure it's true for almost everyone, that we are drawn to people that draw out our best, that lean in and help us to be ourselves, help us to bring out our best gifts because they're asking about us and listening and being a part of that conversation where we can contribute and where we can be ourselves. Yeah, that's so important, especially in a small group context. That leadership where somebody is able to not be at the center of it, but is able to share that with others by listening is really profound and such a godly expression of kind of other love. Um, Tracy, one of the things that I've observed is that for small group leaders who are getting into being a new small group leader, especially, I have often heard people express anxiety around whether they're going to be able to say the right thing. I'm not much of a teacher. I don't know the Bible like other people know it. I'm afraid to be in a counseling situation or something where I'm supposed to say something and I don't know what to say. So I've heard some of those anxieties. But what we're talking about right now is so true. Like, listening is so important. And I can't think of a single time when somebody said to me, I'm not sure if I want to be a small group leader. I'm just not a good enough listener. Like we don't tend to see that, which makes me think that's an easy blind spot. It's easy for us to maybe even be a leader, maybe be a good leader, not be that great of a listener yet, and not even realize it. So help us out. How do we know if we're not a very good listener? Or maybe said more positively, how do we know if there's a lot of room for us to grow as a listener?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think that it takes some intentionality. I love that point. I've also never heard anybody say that. Like, I don't know if I could be a small group leader because I don't know if I can listen. But it is such an important part of the small group experience. Not just you listening to the people in your small group, but I also think modeling and encouraging the small group members to do that for each other.
Yeah.
Basically, you're trying to create an environment where people can both share and be heard, and you're really creating a groundwork for people to do that for one another. So I think that one way to really pay attention to that is to be intentional with knowing that that's a value, stating that from the outset of your small group, and then being intentional about how you model that for one another.
I mean, I think about the times when I've ended a small group and my evaluative question was the true thing said, was the right thing said? And I wonder how it would shift if my evaluative question was, did everyone speak? Did everyone, not that the truth isn't important, of course, but that you're really focusing on drawing people in and really creating a space where people can be heard, where listening is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that's not that easy to come by in people's lives. It can be surprising how valuable that is, because it just isn't always people's common experience.
So Tracy, when we get down to the real practicalities of it, what are some of your go-tos when you're talking with somebody one-on-one or in a group? Like, how do you communicate actively that you're listening?
It's a great question. And you're doing this already. Like, you're a great listener. Your body language, I think, is really important. So how you even signal that you're listening with interest, looking at the person. These are all so basic. So forgive me if these are things that you already know and do, but I would say your body language, looking at the person, not looking away, not looking at your watch, not looking at your phone. These days that's really a thing, right? And being intentional about putting your focus and your literal body attention on them, and pausing other things that might be kind of calling for that. So I think that's really important. I would say also, in your words, mirroring back what people say. I think sometimes, again, we get caught in not being a good listener when we try to fix what people are saying, or we try to jump to advice too quickly, and we try to resolve the tensions or the things that they're feeling or going through. But I don't really think we always need to do that. I think we need to be more careful with that than we think. And actually, listening to someone, I think, often just looks like, oh, it sounds like that's really hard right now. It sounds like that's really confusing for you. But you don't need to be the one to jump in and bring the clarity or bring the resolution.
Right. Yep.
And so even what you say back, I think oftentimes just really seeing yourself as a mirror and reflecting back, oh, it sounds like you're really excited about that. That's wonderful. Or if it's something hard or painful, wow, that's so difficult right now. That sounds really hard. How are you managing that? Asking another question to follow up. So I think, just seeing yourself as someone that creates space for another person is, I think, the most important thing, in all the ways that you do that, through your words, through your, your eye contact, all of that.
It's surprising how sometimes our rushing in to help actually defeats our listening and makes it harder for us to serve in the way that we really can, which is to hear somebody out and give them space to talk about it.
That's so true.
Well, thank you, Tracy. That's really helpful. We look forward to putting that into practice.
Thanks, Drew.